Welcome to our last live stream for this year's Spitfire Audio Black Weekend. It's been such a pleasure talking to so many of you. I don't know if any of you have come on to live chat, but we've had various teams. You were on it on Saturday, weren't you, Paul?
I was, yeah.
And lots of just nice, just kind of having a chat about things, that and the other. This and the other.
It's great.
I think someone asked some advice about plumbing supplies and stuff like that. Just general chit chat. Joshua seemed to attract people who like to talk to you for a long time. We're here, by the way, with a lot of the Spitfires because we're celebrating the end of this season as well, because it's kind of a lot of work goes into this, and so it's just nice to be all around as a family sharing this with you. But a reminder that Black Weekend ends tonight at midnight, actually 11:59 GMT to be precise.
And you are best to look at the Black Weekend collection first, which is chamber strings, solo strings, and Olafur Evo's, three fantastic string libraries there. And if you have any of these components, then it's proportionally deducted in some clever way from the basket. So
just make sure you're logged into the site when you go and look at the prices, and it'll be appropriate for you.
Yes, absolutely. And that also that collection qualifies you for Aperture, so that you check that out as well. Have a look at the Aperture page on the website and have a look at the details for that. It's a great bit of fun that we put together.
It became a little bit controversial because everyone wanted it. But basically, it's eligible. It's an incentive for people who are shopping with us this weekend, and if it's above £299...
Pounds, €349 and dollars, I think, is the equivalent.
The Ton has been hugely successful this year with BDT, which is a real favourite library of mine, Edna Earth, and the orchestral grand piano. That's under $100, or is it? It's $99?
It's exactly $100.
It's exactly $100, hence the name.
Hence the name.
$100, €100,
and pounds.
And pounds.
We're also retiring some collections, some things that were from Black Friday last year, but also a couple of others that have become replaced. There's no products being retired, but these are just some of the collections that are being retired. So it's worth having a quick look at those, because the collections is really where you get the biggest discount.
Oh, absolutely. And yesterday had a bit of a rummage around in your studio, which was very popular. We've asked people to forward some questions, if there's any kind of detailed questions about that cribs and your new build and this amazing new space that you've built, which is called the Bullpen.
Yes.
I've been really encouraging Paul to kind of introduce his videos going, "Hi, it's Paul from the Bullpen." It's funny to be this long in the tooth and to realise I can't imitate bulls. But basically, if you have any questions for us, put them in the live stream, and Josh is on hand here to shout them out, and some of the team will do that as well. But as is tradition, over the last 3 years, we've kind of rounded up the year and all of the... I mean, we were like looking through what we've been doing over the last 12 months, and it is incredible. Mostly highs, but some lows.
Yeah.
So I'll start with mine, which was the last Apex recording we did, where basically I have to go up with some amazing camera and sound crew up to a high place and talk into a camera. We were basically transported to the Badlands of the south of France. And when we were kind of recceing where we were going to shoot, we did notice that there were like these slightly kind of old, battered cars that were circling us a little bit shark-like. And we just thought, just people kind of curious because of all of this really expensive camera equipment and all this kind of stuff we're carrying. So we went up to the top of the Apex, and about halfway up, heard this horrible smash of glass, and then the car alarm go off. And I went, "Oh, we've just been robbed." So we went downstairs, and a dear member of the team, who is quite an expressive person, he's much fitter than me. He ran off into the distance, and I just heard this as he discovered that there like several MacBook Pros had been stolen, and I believe a passport was stolen, and our poor... Yes, he's doing standing there, and he had to go all the way from the Badlands of south of France to, I think it was Bordeaux or something to get. So that was a genuine low point for me. We won't be returning.
My low is not quite as exciting as that. But, was just it's not that sad, but the retirement of Albion 2. Which has just had a kind of fond place in my heart, because it was only the second kind of big library that we'd put together, and I remember it was still at the time when we used to have our kind of PayPal app on our phones, and we'd get really excited when somebody bought something. And so we kind of got ready to release it, and I think I was in Los Angeles, you were in London.
Yeah, yeah.
Blake was up in Arbroath, and then Andy was down in Bournemouth.
And James was in London as well, I think.
James, you were in London as well.
And we only had one login, and the three of us kept on logging each other out.
Yeah, but it was just really exciting to see people just really take it to their hearts and enjoy using it over the years. So
for me, it was the name because we saw all these heroes coming up.
Yeah,
and it was Willie Snuffy Walden, who was basically, for me, the sound of the 1980s TV, 30-something, and the Wonder Years, which was just kind of those formative years when you're a teenager. He was the soundtrack, and to think that he was using our sounds was amazing. But I think that it was that set us on our way. Because also Albion 2 was a bit nuts.
Yeah.
And it was like people still wanted the nuts stuff as well.
It was quite sort of experimental in some ways, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's sad to have seen it go. And I think that was the first time that Flautando may have appeared, which
I think so.
is something.
Yeah.
I've got I guess the first highlights I'm thinking about are somewhat connected. SA Recordings is our recording label, and it's, for so many years, a decade of my career before I thought that I could seriously become a media composer, tried to get record contracts and failed miserably. And so to have a record company is a huge thing of pride. But we were very dead set early on that we would create these sample packs that would go with some of the releases. And that's been a success, very well received. And I think an interesting area for us to investigate in the future. That and Composer Magazine, which is there's this wonderful, very talented woman called Harry who's done SA Recordings, and Lauren, her brainchild is Composer Magazine, which is just a phenomenal resource, and it's going to be ever expanding on the Spitfire website. But I guess the thing that's profound for me is these two projects I had nothing to do with. We had nothing to do with. And that's, key to building a family and an expanding business is to have this kind of talent around us that can, take these responsibilities away from us. I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and in fact, LCO Textures was a kind of exciting highlight in that sense as well, because it was the team. We really had nothing to do with it until the very last bit of post-production, when they just wanted us to kind of pitch in with any thoughts we had about playability and stuff like that. But just to see something that was so well executed and planned, and such a creative bit of kit to write with, was really exciting.
And a nominee of some awards, which is rightly deserved. Yeah. And a great kind of, again, this continuing partnership with LCO is something I'm really proud of. I believe that they performed on the John Lewis advert or were involved in that.
Yes, I think
and so they're really making waves. And I think one of my proud moments, or I don't know, key moments of validation of using orchestras and associating samples with artists was when an American composer approached me in Los Angeles about 2 years ago and said, it's my dream to come to Air Studios and work with the LCO. And I was convinced at that point that really we'd help the exposure of the LCO and stuff. So it's a great collaboration. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. I guess a high point for us both must be BBC Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like pinch me. To have kept that buried, and actually the whole team to have kept that quiet for 3 years is something else. I think one of the musicians may have published it ahead of time.
Yeah, somebody had put on their blog, recording a session today with Spitfire Audio, which we didn't realise straight away. I think it was only when the whole kind of the lead up to the release, it was about a month before, I think.
Right.
And somebody found it and went, what's this? So it was quite interesting that became, a thing then. People started saying maybe it's something to do with the BBC.
Absolutely. So, and it, as we said, it is only just the beginning, and there's lots of
exciting stuff coming.
We've been busy with Black Weekend this week, but we'll be returning to our duties of putting stuff on the page, and we've both got some ideas of stuff to put up and share, which is very exciting. For me, the highlight of that particular experience was going to the BBC TV Centre, which I'd been going to since I was a kid because my parents are actors, and I lived about 2 streets away from it. But both of us felt that it just got strangely nervous. It was just a party.
Yeah. Just going into that building is kind of odd, because every time I've been in there up until that point, or up until we started working on BBC SO, was basically to pitch for a job, or or to talk about the contract for a job. So you're always sitting in the reception area, kind of with your butterflies in your stomach, just thinking, oh God, please let me get it, please let me get it. So it's kind of weird to be there and see all the Spitfire audio.
Yeah, incredibly.
Up on the TVs.
Proud moment.
Yeah.
And as we say, plenty more to come. So surely, though, Paul, I know that you've been a little bit kind of homeless for the last 2 years, maybe?
Yeah.
From a studio point of view.
Yeah.
And so a big achievement for you and a big highlight must be the bullpen.
Getting the bullpen up and running. So, yeah, it's taken over, well, not including the whole planning aspect, but it's taken over a year of building work. And also just fantastic interior design for the acoustics and all that kind of stuff. Chris Wall's level acoustic design. An amazing team from Studio Creations, led by Justin, who helped me plan everything out and kind of bounced ideas backwards and forwards, came up with some really great new kind of ways of connecting stuff together, which is really the kind of meat and potatoes of studio design, isn't it? It's how does it work in reality when you're actually writing?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I'm looking forward to is exploiting this as a resource for the community. Yeah. Paul's been like going, I've tried this thing, make a film.
Yeah.
You don't have to book any time in. No, make a film, up it goes. And that's, I think, going to be great to kind of keep an eye on your channel and the various different bits that you've got coming up.
Good fun.
Do we have any questions about, specific to Paul's studio?
Someone was just asking about Paul's studio, actually. It said, and this is from Hong An. So I'm curious as to why Paul has his listening position in the middle of his room as opposed to against the wall like many other studios.
Yeah, so it's slightly back from the middle. It's not completely bang in the middle. But in fact, the way that it's set up is that on the back wall, there's a huge amount of acoustic treatment. Everything from kind of rock wool to different thicknesses of kind of rubber sheeting in panels, all hidden behind the fabric wrapping. And the way that works is it absorbs tons and tons of the sound coming out of the speakers. And it's not completely dead, because I don't want to mix in a completely dead environment. But it does mean that the front of the desk, where I've got the piano and the drum kit, and where I would set up to record myself playing an acoustic guitar or wind instrument or something, that is slightly more live because there's more kind of surfaces around there. So actually, it doesn't really. I know there's always this kind of thing about that you should have the speakers facing down the long dimension of the room. And all of that kind of stuff. But actually, in reality, I don't think I've ever been in a control room that is like that. As long as you've got the acoustic treatment right, then you can kind of set it up how you want.
I had a studio once that was lengthways, and it was really bad for collaboration because you were squashed in. And I just think that more proscenium kind of aspect is a better approach just to a collaborative working space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any more?
Just so you know, people can't hear me.
Okay. We'll repeat the question. So that question was obviously about why is my listening position bang in the middle? It's not quite bang in the middle. But,
Another one is, Paul, can you actually play the drums?
Can I actually play the drums? I like to think yes. Many others think no. No, it's something that I've been kind of working on. Obviously, I've only had my drum kit set up again for a month or something. So I am practicing. I do try and apportion part of my day to practice different instruments. And so I've been kind of learning from YouTube, funnily enough, and watching some of the great videos about, good hand grip and making sure you don't injure yourself and stuff like that. And just doing a little bit each day. I actually originally bought the kit when we moved to LA in 2012. and had it set up for a while. But then as soon as we moved back to the UK, it's been in storage ever since. So I can kind of keep a beat. But yeah, I'm certainly...
Can you name a favourite drummer?
Oh, Jeff Porcaro.
Okay.
But it's interesting because there's lots of different. I love my mind's gone blank. The drummer from Foo Fighters is an absolutely incredible drummer.
Not Dave Grohl, because he doesn't.
No. Taylor Hawkins,
yeah.
Thank you. And in fact, Taylor Hawkins has done a great, I think it's almost an hour-long interview with BBC Sounds on YouTube. So search Taylor Hawkins BBC and you'll find a really great and interesting interview with him. But I just love, I mean, he practiced listening to the radio and he had, you know, the kind of typical kids' terrible drum kit. But basically, every day when he got home from school, he put his headphones on and just played to the radio, to whatever was on. So I'm trying to do a little bit of that. I'm trying to play along to songs and gradually pick it up.
There's some good YouTube stuff, masterclasses with Travis Barker. Is it Travis Barker? Who I think is absolutely stunning. But I think he should come top of the list, or they should come top of the list of shit bands with great drummers.
Okay.
So that's a really horrible thing to say.
In public.
But yeah, Dennis Chambers, my favourite.
Right,
Kind of
okay.
a session drummer, a jazzer who also did all of the P-Funk and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
We've got a question about the page. Was it morphed out of people's input, or did you already have this in the plan, and what is it now?
The page, it morphed out of the fact that we decided not to pre-prescribe how we were going to do educational content for the BBC. So it came out of the fact that we were starting with a blank page. It still very much is in beta form. And I've got this side thing that I do called Piano Book that has really helped me understand how you need to keep like the engine running on a community-based project. And it's going to be very interesting to see what path that takes, because we did a few educational videos before even the BBC kind of concept came to being, which we thought were going to be really useful, but weren't as popular. And it's just how people consume these things these days is very different, isn't it?
Yeah, they're actually really interesting. They're kind of buried a little bit in the archive. But if you're interested in hearing individual players talking about their instrument, there's some really fascinating videos. What did we call them?
Up close.
Up close.
Maybe therein lies the
yes.
non-specific titling.
Yeah.
We learned this the hard way. We used to, our chamber strings library used to be called Sable. And I remember calling you, Paul, and saying, Paul, have you ever actually Googled? Sable brush is like the most expensive, finest brush an artist can do. And that's what we thought would separate the concept of describe what chamber strings is for. But I actually Googled Sable about a year into it being on sale and just found that all you'd get was the rodent from which the brush is made. And I said, you know, people just are Googling, they're probably Googling chamber strings and not rodents in order to make strings music. And it was Stanley who came up with the idea of, how about Spitfire chamber strings? So at that point, we've stopped kind of obfuscating what these things do.
Yeah.
Another one about the BBC. It's a huge library to delve into, but what instruments or patches are your favourites?
What instruments or patches are our favourites from the BBC SO?
I love the harp and the celeste. The timpani are great. They've got, you know, I think the thing that makes it come alive is having the microphones, because you'll find when you start exploring, I know it's a ton of material to get through, but when you start exploring how the different mics affect the different instruments, you know, you'll find that really interesting, and especially the spill mics. So there are some things like, I know that Andy Blaney was using, was it on the flute or the piccolo? He was using the gallery mics as well.
It's called balcony, is it?
Balcony, sorry,
Yeah,
the balcony mics. So there are lots of different things that you can find like that really give you that incredible kind of 3D space around it. But I love the leader of the seconds.
It's funny you should say that, because my favourite is the seconds, because they sound so different from the firsts. and even including libraries that we've done, I've always felt the firsts and the seconds sound very, very similar, but just they're positioned differently, which is very important.
Yeah.
But I guess because the first call firsts are always sometimes the first call seconds for fixed bands, but with an orchestra, it's... Well, maybe you could explain to me why you think it's so different. That they understand how to blend with each other. There's different levels of vibrato, that kind of stuff.
I think so. Venturing into territory which I'm certainly not an expert on, but my impression is that the orchestra sections are very much more led from the front, and therefore everyone will be trying to blend with the leader and their desk. But I'm sure that there are currently, 10 orchestral violinists furiously tapping at the keyboard, going, "Nah, it's complete rubbish."
Throwing their tins of rosin at the computer screens.
But that's my guess would be that it's they certainly blend incredibly well like that, and it's a different kind of sound to when you have a session band and you can kind of hear more of the individual players.
But you would agree that it's a similar difference to the violas to violins,
very different. Yeah, very different.
The first and the seconds.
Yes, absolutely. And I think maybe the leader of the seconds has to be less kind of virtuosic sounding, as opposed to certainly nothing to do with their talent as a player, but they have to be less kind of obvious because
they're not top line.
They're not the top line. Yeah. So I don't know.
These are all great questions, though.
Yeah.
This one's quite straightforward, but I like it. Could you share with us what soundtracks you're really enjoying to listen to?
What soundtracks we're really enjoying listening to?
Okay, so I've loved... there's two John Williams soundtracks that I really love, Minority Report and AI, which I really love because they're kind of slightly unusual in the kind of way that the orchestration is done and the time signatures and stuff like that. So I do love listening to those. Have you got any?
My favourite kind of contemporary at the moment is the score to Chernobyl by Hilda, and I just think it's absolutely sensationally kind of visceral. It feels like it's coming out of the action. And really be very interested to know how she did it. I believe that there's some samples of factories and stuff that happened there. I don't know if anyone here knows about it. It was a nuclear power plant in the Ukraine that she sampled, and we love a bit of sampling. So that was that's absolutely stunning. I have to say, I mean, I'm just trying to go through the films that I've watched this year. It's not a score, but I think if you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it is the most incredible sound design and sound mixing I've ever heard. I mean, it's so pulpy and over the top, but it is absolutely sublime, and I hope that they win the Oscar, because it is. And the difficulty with these things, it's like the effects, like an Avengers film or a science fiction film usually gets noticed, but it's really artistically done, and I would, if you haven't watched it on a pair of headphones, I'd really recommend it, because it's a masterclass in hyping the environment and putting you in the place and the time. And obviously, it doesn't really have much of a score because it's a lot of synchronized stuff. But I think that we're all very tuned into sound, so that just might be, if you've had enough of listening to music for a bit, go and have a watch of that film, and it's just tremendous sound.
It's funny you say that about sound, because I kind of think there's two things that you kind of listen to sometimes, and two. So also, I've got a couple of recommendations. I'm sure people know, but there's a fantastic cue. I think things that make an impact on you, that have an effect on you. One of them is the scene in Apocalypse Now. I think it's called Orange Light, the cue, and it's when the helicopters are taking off and the sun is really low in the sky, and it's just before the ride of the Valkyries, and it's only like 90 seconds long, but it's just synths, but it just has this amazing kind of feel, the kind of amazing kind of gripping thing about it that I really love. and then of recent films, I guess Interstellar is another one that I think for the kind of the sound world of it is something that just is incredibly emotive. And so I love that kind of element.
Dunkirk is a great score
Yeah.
as well. Really, really fantastic. I think if I was to cite one of my favourite cues and something that really inspired me and made me understand the power of music was there's an end montage in a Coen Brothers film called Raising Arizona, which is a real slapstick comedy thing. And it's just like, it's absurd what's going on. I mean, there's a giant kind of wrestler guy with a big beard stealing a baby and putting him on the front of his motorbike, and he's kind of setting fire to rabbits and all of this kind of stuff. Nicolas Cage in his kind of craziest hair performance. And they just put this beautiful, almost Celtic theme underneath that just gives it this portent that is just absolutely wonderful. I watched... maybe a year ago, I watched Risky Business again, thinking that was always a really good film. It's a terrible movie. I mean, what I realised looking at it, it was always a terrible music, but the Tangerine Dream score gave it this kind of this weight, which was quite extraordinary. Yeah, very powerful.
Yeah.
We had someone earlier just say, "Can we do another surgery?" And in that, there's another question here, which is quite surgery-like. It's just, did you guys spend more time making connections and trying to get work than writing work at the start?
Okay, so this is about the surgery. Well, thank you so much for complimenting us. Immense effort of the surgery, and it's something that we've learnt a lot from it, and it's something I would really like to repeat. And I think that people now understand that it's kind of getting down and dirty right into the kind of the long reads about our industry and how difficult it can be sometimes. But to answer the question, which was how much time like kind of networking, being seen versus writing.
Yeah.
I was terrible at networking.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too.
And I think that there are some huge success stories who are contemporaries of ours who I would kind of go, oh my God, I hope that doesn't work for you because I'm really terrible at that, and I hope that's not but I think it is. I think it really is. It's not just being part of the scene amongst filmmakers and producers, it's being amongst the composing fraternity. And when I moved here to Tileyard, which is before kind of Spitfire set up here, so to speak, which would have been 5, maybe 6 years ago, so quite a way into my career, I couldn't believe how many of these composers knew each other and didn't see each other as competitors and exchange notes and all of that kind of stuff. So, it was interesting. Someone asked me a question of, what if you don't live in a hub? What if you don't live in London, if you don't live in LA, Berlin, New York, and you can't, become, part of the scene? I think it's very easy to find key events through the year which you can attend, and people will recognise you after a while. So we did a thing at ASCAP in LA, stuff like that, and there are things at the BFI here. Yeah,
I think that's good. That's a good way to, especially depending on kind of what age you are as well. If you're kind of college age, try and find a nearby college where there are young filmmakers making films, and try and collaborate with them, because there's a huge element of the job is being a good collaborator, as opposed to being the most incredible technical composer. Obviously, that's great if you are, but it's no good if you can't collaborate, because film is a collaborative art.
And would you say spending time, when you're not kind of in work, spending time maybe rescoring existing cues and doing film music is better than maybe creating an EP with your own artist name?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. Obviously you can, if you're practicing stuff, practicing the craft is great. But equally, there's a huge amount of interest now, especially with Netflix, in in kind of hiring an artist, or what the producers perceive to be an artist, and we're all musicians, so we kind of, we know that it's kind of an interchangeable label, really. But actually making your own projects is good, because it not only it gets your stuff out there and presents you as an artist, but it's good to have the discipline of being able to start a project and then actually see it through with nobody saying, if you don't deliver on the 21st, then I'm not paying you. So, I think both useful. But
I think finding your own vernacular is incredibly important.
Yeah.
I think it's very tempting. I think that quite a lot of us really like it when we make music that doesn't sound anything like us. There's something a bit kind of, I don't know, oh, wow, that sounds like John Williams, that must be good. And people actually maybe want you. And defining what you is quite a difficult thing, which is why I always talk about kind of making your own sample libraries and stuff, because it's a very, very fast route to originality and creating stuff that no one else has done before. It was very funny, actually, during the Spitfire Audio Day, the door in the unit we've got the studio in has a really weird creak, and we all had to wait upstairs for 5 minutes. There's a big crew of people who are on a tour. We all had to wait for 5 minutes whilst this guy with his Zoom recorder sampled it. So he's one of us.
Just one from us, really. It would be good to know what people watching would like us to create content-wise, if you wanted to ask that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So Josh is saying, what would you like us to create content-wise? So what are the things, I guess you mean, videos, articles? We tend to try and kind of think of things that we think are going to be interesting and to try and follow things that we're interested in. But obviously it's great to get suggestions, certainly from you said when you started your YouTube channel, and I found that actually people making suggestions in the comments is incredibly useful because obviously it gives you an idea of what people want to see and what they might find useful, but also it gives you a kind of nice long list of to-dos that you can work your way through.
Absolutely. We've also got this lovely, wonderful space here, which is, we've had jam sessions here, performances, the surgery, all sorts of panels and stuff. If there's anything you'd like to see this space used, we see it very much as the community, our fraternity and sorority. We see it as an owned space for the community. So if there's anything that you think we should be doing here, we're all ears.
Yeah.
I think one final one really is just about creativity and like where maybe you find your creativity when you start writing, and maybe to help anyone at home that maybe is struggling with that.
You've got your charcoal sketch.
Yeah, I've got several things that I recommend. One is the worst place to find inspiration and to be truly creative is in front of a computer, because it is basically a hybrid calculator typewriter with a screen. And it is the fundamental heart of a computer is not that of music, and therefore will always encourage you to work in a way that is regular and predictable. So getting away from the computer, whether that's against a piano or, as I do, just going for a walk with a phone or a dictaphone, and it's always really amusing when I listen to them. What's that meant to be? There's that. Work out and be, I think, being honest with yourself about when you are actually creative. Productive and creative are two different things in my mind, and I find I'm very productive early in the morning. But the big inspirations come, regrettably, usually at the point I've decided to go to the pub in the evening, and that's where I just kind of go, time for the pub. And apparently psychologists say that creativity happens when you're actually in the moment. You're not thinking about before, you're not thinking about what's ahead, you're just in the moment. So it's understanding when you're best creative. And I use that moment to just actually be creative, even if it's just literally like a charcoal sketch. And then I never, for the productive kind of part of my day, which is early in the morning, I never go to work without with a blank screen or a blank idea. So you never have that kind of inner fear I think a lot of us composers have. And thirdly, so I'm hogging, just make sample libraries, honestly. Just sample anything. Even if it sounds awful, I've done these things with like bagpipes and rusty gates. It's recognising the beauty in everything. And that's something that I think John Cage set us on a road with his silent piece, 4 minutes 33, and that's the fun thing. It's not just finding a great sound and using that. It's actually finding any sound and seeing the beauty in it and extracting that, and it being your sound, and then your music will come out of your sound. That's my humble opinion.
That's all good stuff. I think the only thing that I'd add to that is well, two things actually. One thing is it's really good to learn to write music. And the reason that I say that is because it allows you to, even if you're sitting next to the piano and you're just checking that you've got it right and then writing it on a piece of paper, it's a bit slow actually, but it allows you to be free of the kind of, whether it's on the piano, the shapes that you go to all the time, or on the guitar, and to actually think in a slightly separated, more linear way. And the other thing is that a lot of the time I write, having said that, I write improvising at the piano. It's kind of probably 50-50. And if I'm doing that, then I kind of record, or it might be the piano, the controller keyboard into the DAW, but it's on a piano sound. And I will record, I remember a story about Bono, how he wrote lyrics, and he would just sing nonsense sounds, but just with the right intention, and then sit and work out what he was trying to say afterwards. And I do that quite a lot on the keyboard, so I'll have an idea of what I want this piece to be doing, and I'll move my hands around and I'll kind of, you know, some of it will sound good and some of it will just be complete rubbish. And then I go back in and sift through it and go, this bit was really good, the way that was going up there and that kind of rhythm thing, but the notes are all wrong, so what are the right notes? And it's really just exactly what you're saying. It's getting beyond the blank page. It's always easier to work with something that you've got than just to sit there waiting for inspiration, because it'll, you know, never come 99%.
And beyond your own limitations, as you know, you were talking about the shapes and stuff. Had exactly the same conversation with Eric Whittaker, who said, you know, I just basically, whenever I was at the piano, I just find the same shapes. If I was going to do a G minor, it would always be that inversion, that shape, that 9 that I put in and stuff. So, and I'm right in saying that Eric Whittaker isn't a massive kind of conservatoire theorist, is he?
No, I don't think so. I think he kind of discovered choral music when he was at university in Utah, I think. Utah or Nevada. Nevada. So he came to, and then obviously was kind of deeply bedded into choral music and studied over here, or was, I think he was a composer in residence at a college, one of the Oxbridge colleges. Anybody? Eric on that. Is it
Sorry, Eric.
Sydney Sussex College or
Right.
I don't know. One of the colleges, you can look it up after, and spent certainly 4 or 5 years, I think, there, just soaking up the kind of influence of the kind of amazing choral tradition that we're lucky to have in this country.
Another angle with that, actually, I don't know if you've seen it yet, is I interviewed Martin Phipps, who's my favourite composer, and he is, by his own admission, appalling with the piano. I mean, so much so that Hans went, I just play it on the piano, and Martin's, I'm not going to try Hans's accent, and Martin went, no, honestly, Hans, I really don't want to do that. I mean, go on. And then Martin started playing it at the piano, and Hans went, right, no, you really are. You're actually worse than me at the piano. So what Martin does is he spends a lot of time really honing stuff by physically programming stuff in and shaping it. And I recently visited a complex where a whole bunch of different composers work, and we're in this one guy's room, and we were trying to play one of our samples, and I'm not joking, the buffer was like, donk, donk, and it was like, how can you work with like a buffer that's like a minute? And he said, well, no, because I physically don't play anything in. I literally draw. And there are people, I know that Blake does it that way, and draws in the automation. And I think, again, it just helps people go past your own possible capabilities as a piano player, as a guitarist, whatever, or particularly if you're a guitarist coming to the medium of samples and keyboards and stuff, is that actually, yes, you can write it on the page, but also you can actually draw these things on the matrix, and there are many, many different ways that people work.
Yeah, people can read the piano roll. I mean, I know Hans said he learned the piano roll was his kind of thing. He could just look at it and see exactly what was going to come out. So,
brilliant stuff. So, talking of which, nice link, Paul.
Segue.
Highlights.
So, again, one of my highlights of the year was working on the Hans Zimmer Strings update. And just, thank you. And
before you tell your story, I have to say it was a really vicarious and very proud moment for me is your co-founder, because I knew what that meant to you, and to actually watch you working side by side, it was like good on you. No, really, really good.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's just so interesting. And we had, it kind of went back. I've told this story before, so I won't repeat it. But going back to the beginning of of when Hans was working on Dunkirk, and those interesting kind of sessions of experimenting with it was at that point a huge bass section, and then kind of coming in and doing bits and pieces with some brass and getting going on what then became Hans Zimmer strings. Just absolute kind of pinch me kind of moment. To be standing, discussing what we were going to record, how we were going to record it, running the session with the kind of godfather of sampling, of orchestral sampling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just nuts, but it really exciting, and we did quite extensive recording. So we did a period of recording at that stage just to get the project off the ground. And then there was a period of recording we did a few weeks later, maybe it was a month or so later, once we'd kind of sifted through that initial content and gone, right, this is great, this is going to work. And so I couldn't be at all of the sessions. They were incredibly, fantastically run by Harry. And so what the kind of compromise was that I could dial in from home. I think it might have been my wedding anniversary or something like that. There was some reason why it would have been a really bad idea for me to disappear for the weekend. Anyway, so I was dialed in at home, and it was great as well. We had a kind of whole team all chatting. We had a separate line where we were chatting about what was going on and the instructions that Gavin would be giving to the players. And an incredibly great sounding stream from Lyndhurst Hall. Anyway, at certain points, we got to a certain point in the evening where it was all fine. There was no need for me to be listening in. Everything was brilliant, and so I took my headphones off and left my little studio, which you might remember from the very beginning of my YouTube channel, which is next door to one of my daughter's bedrooms. And I went to bed. And then what I found out the next day was that at about 9:45, just before the session finished, she woke up and she could hear this like very slow, psycho coming from somewhere. And apparently she lay in bed for 10 minutes, absolutely terrified, thinking, oh my God, what is that? Until eventually she got up the courage to come out of her bedroom and realised it was coming out of my headphones next door, so... Sorry for that. But yeah, so it's been an absolute amazing experience. And the great news is that the update is only days away. And I can tell you that there is more than 60 gigabytes of new content that we recorded. It's just absolutely nuts. And I had a lot of fun on Monday writing a little demo which uses only the update sounds. So you'll hear that in a couple of days, and you can kind of hear what we've done. But it's really cool.
I'm right in saying that's going to be free?
Yeah, totally free update. So.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Before someone goes...
Yeah.
So it's going to be... I mean, that is our policy anyway. We think our libraries are kind of living libraries. So for any of you who have grabbed Hans Zimmer Strings this Black Weekend, congratulations on that. And I believe it will remain on its amazing promo deal for the rest of the month. So well worth having a think about, particularly in respect of collections that it's in for the remainder of the Black Weekend. Now, of all the highlights, I think I speak for both of us, of the year, it is continuing to work with this amazing team that you can't see. They're in the dim darkness. It's just the most incredible. It's not only the most incredibly talented bunch of people who are, from Harry and Stanley making amazing stuff like the LCO textures, to the amazing engineering departments and development departments, our amazing accounts department who distribute to hundreds of musicians twice yearly, our marketing department, but also to the amazing crew that's basically built a film to TV studio in a live TV in a dining room.
Even more terrifying.
Done it with such aplomb and such enthusiasm from the guys through there behind the glass who we can't hear them, so they're probably going. to Sally behind the camera with the idiot boards for this idiot. It's just an absolute pleasure to work with you. And I think there's something that I wanted to get across is that it is a real family here. You know, it's just there isn't a bad egg. You know, it's absolutely fantastic. So. Yeah. So, we are all about to go and drink some very fine bourbon. But before we do that, just a reminder that Black Weekend ends tonight at midnight. Actually, technically it ends at 11:59 GMT. That's Greenwich Mean Time.
23:59, yeah.
23, sorry, yes.
Well, we're already past 11, aren't we? So
Are we?
it seems like I need the idiot board. Yeah, so also just to check out the Black Weekend collection, which, just to remind you, is chamber strings, solo strings at Olafur Evo's 3 fantastic string libraries. Not to forget that will qualify you for Aperture, but also you can read the details and see how you qualify for Aperture. A little bit of fun that we put together for Black Weekend.
Which is awesome. And Paul, is Aperture ever coming back?
No.
No.
No. It is never coming back.
That's it. Tonight, it's all done.
Yeah.
The ton is by far the most popular deal that we have. $100, €100, £100 for BDT, which is just an insanely useful library, British Drama Toolkit, EDNA, Earth, and the Orchestra Grand Piano. This fits perfectly within any of the symphonic ranges you have. If you don't have a piano, it just locks in. It's a contextual piano, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's a really handy gem to have.
Very, very light system resources, and it just sits beautifully behind the orchestra. Really, really good for that.
Finally, retiring collections. Do go and check out the collections page on the Spitfire site, and the details are very kind of obvious there. But I think it just goes without saying that we wouldn't be here, and all of these guys wouldn't be here without your support and your enthusiasm. So do, for the last few hours, come and join us on live chat. I might kind of pop on later on. I know that Homai's been working on it, you've been on it, and the amazing customer experience team and members from all parts of the business. So come and say hi, and thanks, as always, for your support.
Thank you.
See you soon.